All right, we are live. It says we're live. Imagine that now. This is good. What a beautiful day in Cape Breton Island. I'm in Île-Madame, just outside of Arishat, Little Ants, and hope that after this is all over, or when we get through this, all of you will make a trip up here and check out Little Ants in Île-Madame, because it's a place I'd never seen until I actually moved here, believe it or not. So it's a quite beautiful place. So we're going to give the audience here a little bit of a chance to build an audience. I want to thank all of you viewers for coming on this evening. I have the pleasure of having the Mayor of Sydney, Cape Breton, the CBRM, on with us, Cecil Clark. I want to give the thanks and shout out to him as well for coming on. Everyone is extremely busy. So for our leaders in our communities to take time out to address the community, we really appreciate it. So thank you again. How are you all doing this evening? This is Rebecca from Ripple Effects Canada here in Île-Madame. I see everyone joining here. The comments on this side, you can place comments, not saying we'll get to address them all, but definitely feel free to put your comments there on the side. And that way you can be part of the conversation. All right, we're gonna give it about another 30 seconds. How's the weather where you are? Let us know where you're watching from. We always like hearing where our viewers are tuning in from. We notice we get quite a footprint all over Canada sometimes, so thank you for joining us. Those of you that have come to Cape Breton to visit and also actually live here, thank you for joining us. So the numbers are growing fast as we speak up in the top right-hand or left-hand corner, so this is great. I'm just gonna switch my screen over here so that I can see all you wonderful people joining us. And there we go. All right, and I also want to give a shout out to my team tonight. Thank you for helping me behind scene. We have moderators in Toronto and moderators here in Cape Breton behind scene, so thank you very much. All right, you guys, so like I said, we have Cecil Clark on this evening live from the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, and I'd like to bring him on. Please welcome here as I bring him on screen. All right. There we go. Cecil, we're live.
Hey, good evening, Rebecca. Great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're extremely busy right now, but I really thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
How are you doing?
Oh, very good. It's been days blur, and people talk about new norms. Rebecca, there's no new norm. It's just a new day, and we respond to each day. And so opportunities like this to engage with you and your viewers is a great opportunity, because the things do shift by the day. And I think these opportunities are great for us to stay connected with the public and stay informed. And some of it will have answers right away, and some of it will be follow-up we can provide to you for your viewers.
That's excellent. I really appreciate that. So why don't you kick off this live here, Cecil, with just, well, how are you doing was number one, and just a generalized, what are you noticing in your area that's taking place? How are people responding to the COVID measures in place? You know, kind of just give us a general idea of what Sydney looks like right now.
Well, it's much slower and quieter than it's ever been that I can recall. What we do have now are people who are abiding by in vast majority. So let's do a compliment and a shout out to everyone that's adhering to the directives of the state of emergency under the Health Protection Act and the state of emergency. We have seen people provide the social distancing or walking in stores. We have also seen the need for enforcement. And now over 40 plus tickets have been issued by our regional police. So we are not afraid of having our officials do the enforcement where necessary. We're taking this very seriously. When you look at the numbers, Rebecca, we're doing extremely well in our eastern region. And it's because of this, as we say, flattening the curve. We're all about that. And from an operational point of view, it's a lot of challenges because we're operating from offsite with less crews, different rotations, different scheduling. But ultimately, as a municipality, we're no different than households. We have to adjust as people adjust to provide municipal services. But during a pandemic, we still make sure that there's safe drinking water, that our waste management systems are operating, that all of public works, and now we're getting into pothole season, so people expect those repairs and their necessary work to be done. So throughout the CBRM and with fire and police, they are fully deployed and taxed for their resources right now. So, we're taking it day by day, but what we do have is all levels of government. I must say, all levels of government are working together. Any partisanship has long been put aside. It hasn't existed one day during this pandemic, which is very refreshing actually, to everybody working in one team effort and having direct access, whether that's the minister, premier's office, or members of parliament, all MLAs, all councillors, or First Nations. This has been extraordinary from that point of view, and this pandemic has brought out the best in people, showing kindness and compassion, caring for their neighbor, and especially for a vulnerable population. We're seeing our community come together. We're seeing food bank drives. We're seeing volunteers step up where others can't be there right now. So every day, as I say, it's new challenges, but it's bringing new energy by seeing the resolve and the resilience of our population come to its height and its best.
Yeah, I have to agree with you all over, I mean, Cape Breton Island, all over the world for that matter, but Cape Breton, we would expect no less that Cape Bretoners would rise to the, to the unexpected challenge. And we see a lot of care groups, people dropping off groceries, taking measures in place. So it's really reassuring for us to see that. I know myself and the kids, we haven't left the house in quite a while. So to watch this from afar is something good to see. So that's good. You kind of answered my first question. My first question tonight was, what has the CBRM implemented so far so that it is clear for the public? Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Cecil?
Yeah, if I can, thank you, because it's a really important one. And we've been directing people. We've had information kits. We have a dedicated phone line now for inquiries at 563-2276 or 563-CBRM for people to go to get a live person, a message, someone will call back, whatever the concerns are. We have information kits we've been putting out by the hundreds to citizens that want more information and are being delivered to doorsteps. We have taken measures, have been dealt with. Planning and development department have had to scale back, and they're processing off-site development permits because we need to keep people working. We need to keep the economy moving as best we can. So they're processing in a different way. There's lots of waiving of processes and fee structures. As we know with our tax, there's a deferral of mechanisms. Tax bills just went out in the mail. So as people receive those bills, if they have concerns about their ability to pay, our staff are there to provide a live connect for them to talk about and make arrangements. Our waste management facilities have had to shut down to public access at this time. We've had to downsize the access to the transit, but the province has deemed Halifax and CBRM to be essential services for transit. So a large bus has now gone down to a maximum of 8 riders and 1 driver, to our handy trans buses to a maximum of 4 passengers and 1 driver. So we're working within those strains, and people would think you need less staff. Well, actually, it's taxing our staff to do more, and they have to take the precautionary measures. We have staff, for instance, that are in other facilities that are working, cleaning buses, making sure they're sanitized more thoroughly to the standards we've been asked to meet, and we're doing that. For occupational health and safety, our officials are going by division, making sure staff have the proper hygiene, sanitation, all of those measures in place, Rebecca. So many different things throughout the municipality across the board. Fire doing a different scheduling for in the career service. Our chief working with volunteers, and within police. The policing side is very taxing right now on an enforcement side for directives. And so as we go forward, we call upon more and more public cooperation to assist us in making sure we get through the pandemic.
That's excellent, Cecil. Thanks for answering that. Another question that I have is the CBRM looking at further extending their protocols for public safety, such as limiting transit, public work, etc.? And you may have just answered a little bit of that, but if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Well, so on the transit side, it has been met to the standard being adhered to I believe for Halifax and Sydney, as an essential service. Again, special care about entering and exiting. You enter on the back. We have the driver separate from the passengers to make sure that that's safety. People are traveling. There's no transaction of money or fees, so that is to provide that protection. We continue to make sure that when you look at those essential services, how do you ensure a flow of people? And some of the measures we're doing is educating the public. I've seen where people are not complying in a store is don't get on the phone and call the police, talk to the manager. The managers have a protocol with the police to assist. And so we're engaging on so many different levels through our officials. And what we're also doing is operating City Hall at a minimal right now to maintain health and safety and occupational health safety standards there, because it has to be the emergency command center. If our fire chief and director of fire and emergency services, for EMO, Michael Seth, needs to do that, and they've been ramping up, they've been monitoring, and now they're activating. The province has its provincial command center in full operational status now, and we collaborate day by day. So as we see these measures come forward, we're responding as required. And as we've seen with this pandemic, is we keep shifting as what is required. And we've seen that with protective equipment like masks. That wasn't at the first, our Canadian Officer of Health, Dr. Tam, had indicated not to have masks. And we quickly have transitioned into trying to get as much PPE and masks in place for our frontline workers and essential workers throughout the CBRM.
So the CBRM has gone out and rented porta potties. Is this, and the other question I had was, is this the best that can be done for the vulnerable in our communities? Would the CBRM ever consider looking to the federal government like the Out of the Cold shelter did in Halifax to put those people in empty hotels?
So we actually haven't rented the porta potties. We've responded to the Ally Center and community partners concerned about homeless with retail operations shutting down and garages not having and gas stations not having public washrooms accessible. So this item, in terms of having 7 community locations that would have an access to a washroom that would be a public washroom for those who are without a home or homeless. And there's some people who have a place to stay at night, but don't have a place to stay during the day. So to provide them with that. But that was part of a broader response by the CBRM to have facilities in each of our divisions where people can go to have a shower for proper hygiene and get sanitary products. So in Glace Bay, Undercurrent, and as well as Sydney and the Ally Center, the Community Cares Youth Outreach in Sydney Mines, will all have shower, washer, dryer for people who require that. We'll have the products there, towels, all those items for people to have a day-to-day access for those services. We've also responded to our homeless shelters in terms of our officials getting inspections to get the Margaret Street Center back up and operational, working with Fred DeVoe and his team at Cape Breton Housing, and with the Townsend Street, looking at how they can add more capacity there. We've also worked with public health. They have, if any person who would be homeless or vulnerable and doesn't have a place to stay and had to self-isolate, they would use hoteling for that. And so we would consider any partnership as a municipality that would support a community group if they wanted to have access to federal and or provincial dollars, but federal dollars, we'd be willing to do that. But the CBRM response to date to the 134,000 has additional tens of thousands in terms of people in the street and out in the community that are on the street level providing the services. So again, we've responded to our agencies looking for support, and we can always do more, but we're responding as we go, and we're just hoping to have that program fully operational this week.
Just letting our viewers know too, I can see all the comments and hellos and appreciation for having Cecil on. So thank you. I'd love to say hello to you all in a moment here, and I'm sure Cecil will acknowledge that too in a moment. Cecil, thank you for that comment there. I'm just taking a few notes while you were writing. Another question I had is what measures have been put in place for CBRM first responders, such as police and fire? What has the CBRM done to provide proper safety equipment to the volunteer fire department within CBRM that already operate on a minimal budget? What's been put in place there, if you don't mind commenting?
Sure, happy to do that. So the response is twofold because the province have basically cut out the medical first responder, which volunteer departments would normally do, except for those issues of extrication and accident response. So the medical first responder means that there's less exposure and risk for those volunteers. However, our chief of fire and emergency management for the CBRM, as well as our acting chief of police, work within the protocols of the Provincial Emergency Measures Organization. They identify, they've already shipped in supply of PPE or protective personal equipment that will be in place. The chief works within the career service for what they need, and they've adjusted their work schedule to accommodate having enough career complement in those areas where career work. With volunteer, the chief is looking at what protective equipment they would require. We have had a shipment in from the province that was delivered. We've been advised there's more equipment coming to the CBRM, and not just to us, across the island, to all municipal units and emergency providers. Within the police, we also have different measures because of the points of contact, having to respond to emergency situations or go into facilities, which also means engaging with the unions representing police and fire to make sure occupational health and safety standards are met. And as I said earlier, we're now kind of catching up from when we were at the front of this pandemic, when it was almost discouraged to wear protective masks, as an example, to now necessitating them, and two types. Those that would be a high filtration capacity, and then the regular people would know as a surgical mask, depending on the activity. And as you know, many people are making masks at home just for their own personal use and maintaining. So we're entering a new phase of this pandemic, and we're responding as we go. We're very mindful of our first responders having the most amount of protection. Anytime as well that we've received from the private sector, I have had offers to our office of people saying we have supplies or we have access to suppliers of protective equipment. We immediately provide that to our EMO team, and they would follow up. So anytime we have people saying there's product available, we share that. So whether it's coming out of Halifax for EMO, through the existing inventories, but there has been a catch-up factor here, no doubt, Rebecca, in terms of getting more supplies in. And aside from us, we're municipally operating, but our frontline emergency response people have to have that. But we have people that go curbside to people's homes for emergencies as well, whether that's a water line break, a sewer line break, have to interact. So our occupational health and safety official is making sure that Karen Butterworth, is connecting with our employees of what they need. And workplace safety and sanitation is a priority number one for all of us.
Thank you for that, Cecil. Again, I just noticed a bunch of new viewers just came on. Thank you for your comments on the side, and we will address some of those at the end. They are saved, so please feel free to put in your engagement there. What has been deemed essential services in the CBRM, and how was that decision, or how was the decision made on this?
So again, the province of Nova Scotia, Rebecca, would identify any areas where they deem them to be essential. They deemed transit to be an essential service. We know police and fire are essential services, but within a municipality, there's few areas where we don't have essential operating services in place. As I mentioned before, water utility must operate, right. Waste management, waste systems have to manage and go forward. Day-to-day public works activities have to be maintained, and we're entering in, as I mentioned, to repair season, and we're also getting fully engaged in a massive amount of capital work to put people to work. We have tens of millions of dollars to roll out, so our engineering and public works staff are fully at full peak capacity. Our human resource department is working with all of the departments to make sure that we're catching up and day by day, and that we're meeting occupational health and safety, as I mentioned before. So when you look across, like I
Yeah.
mentioned, planning and development are working on permits to make sure people can continue to build and get projects moved forward. We've seen that the department, all the finance staff, our citizen service center, which is closed, still has people working, whether downstairs within the appropriate social distancing at the main entry level. No public access, but they're taking those phone calls at the 563-2276. And so we have people engaging there. As I mentioned, with the tax bills out, finance staff are doing
Yep.
live. So we're not relying on people with email. They can have a real person to talk to. Our 911 center
Yep.
is at full operational capacity. There's almost, in some cases, some overload. So that's why we put more staff on that. We've deployed staff that would be in, for instance, Center 200 that would go out and clean buses now. So they may be employed. They're not working at Center 200, but they're working at a CBRM function. So when you look at it in totality, the province deem essential services that must be met and adhered to. But as a municipality, there's very few things that aren't. One of the areas that people would say where, for instance, just like Halifax, are crosswalk guards. So that's an area that people will look at in terms of, we know school was delayed, but now we have to address that. So the CAO and staff will look at, if school's not returning, what do we have to do in terms of crosswalk guards? In the recreation department and staff, we've looked at how do we reposition staff to help out. The United Way is doing a lot of engagement pieces. We've reached out to the United Way of Cape Breton to say, if our staff can help take up some of the service delivery supports for you and with you, we're doing that. So our manager, Kirk Durning, is working with Lynn McCarran and her team at the United Way to say, can our staff be reassigned to help out in other areas because they can't do community programming right now? So, like I said, across the board, things have been very busy, and operationally, we've been doing our best. And some people think with a pandemic, people are putting less hours in, but in fact, it's the opposite. People have been putting more hours in and trying to accommodate, also giving some breaks to some staff that have been operating almost around the clock.
Yeah, coming together. And so you're going to find likely my next question, Cecil, a little bit repetitive, so bear with me here. During the pandemic, those essential services have been left in place, but how are services like the City Hall employees, inside workers at the arenas and the Sydney Port deemed an essential when there is an option to save thousands of dollars in salaries by laying them off temporarily? As we know, the cruise industry has been suspended across the world. So you did address that somewhat in your last comment. Is there anything, though, that you'd like to add to that?
Yes, please. I would like to, Rebecca. So you mentioned the port. So, it was starting out to be a very exciting year as we had the second berth coming to its completion, to have our biggest cruise season ever, and to all of that come to a sudden and immediate halt. What we would normally have as immediate staff and contractual is 15 staff that would work at the port. We are now down from 15 to 5 staff. There's just not the activities. But there are operational things occurring there right now. Canadian Coast Guard ships come in, the weekly fuel vessels come in, the maintenance of the facilities and just general security maintenance activities would happen there. But the other piece is we have to plan for recovery. So the port has to focus on what are we doing post-pandemic to get business back and plan for next year. But staffing will ramp up after we get the all clear and the green light to go forward. But planning now is becoming paramount. So staff are shifting their focus on what is affecting all ports within what was a very large, quickly growing opportunity for our community, with the impacts. And then they have to work with the people who have normally had leases, the crafters, the local people, the excursions. It's just been a ripple effect of all those relationships with Destination Cape Breton and others. So that's just one piece. Within City Hall, as I say, we're down to minimal entry in and out of the facility. It's restricted. People are doing, shared days in and trading off schedules with regards to the work that's there. I've started to try to, do that work off schedule. And when going in, we have minimal people around so that we're there when we have to be there for key emergency management calls, council briefings, those types of things. So again, we were working with, in some case, which looks skeleton crew, but we were out there just like we are right now in rooms in our homes and working away. So just because the building is quiet doesn't mean work has ended.
Yes, no, I can see that. My last question before we open it up to the viewers there. In recent news, leaders including our neighboring municipality of the HRM have decided to take up a 20% pay rate cut to help their local economy. Is this something yourself and the council will be looking at doing as well to help save the already hard-pressed economy of the CBRM?
Well, look, when we have to respond to a pandemic, we have to look at all aspects. I know Mayor Savage today came out and indicated he'd be willing to take or is going to take a wage reduction. If that is something that we're going to do across all the municipalities, the CBRM is not going to stand alone and not be part of any of that. But at the same time, that's something I'll discuss with my council colleagues. That is something that I will make sure that we will. But one of the things I will do is talk to Mike and say, what are the mechanics? How are you doing that? Mayor Savage and I spoke on the weekend about where, as the regional municipalities, where are our challenges in dealing with the fiscal relationship with the province and how we deal with the Nova Scotia Federation municipalities. So this is a matter in terms of a policy. I don't know, with the Nova Scotia Federations of Municipalities, which we tend to work with on a day-to-day basis in terms of relationship with the province, I'm happy to do that. It isn't about trying to justify if we're all having to look at reduced revenues coming into our municipalities, and I have to be part of showing that leadership. I will, but we have to do that as a decision. And I think we need to do that as a Nova Scotia team as well. And what I also know is that it's basically a symbol to people that you recognize there's people that are making sacrifices. And I also know that, in public life, people are putting in those extra hours. There are no days anymore. They just are one day after another. And you constantly are saying to people, what day is it today? Like, we just start over again and keep working through any challenges. So again, Rebecca, I'll be actually having a call with Mike to say, are you working through the mechanics of this? And I'll take it back to my colleagues.
Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge some viewers. Belinda Nicholson from Sydney Mines. Awesome to see you on, Cecil. She says, say hi to your father for me. So that was Belinda Nicholson. Lots of positive support here coming from the comments. Deborah Poirier, wow, Paul McDonald, Kathy McKinnon. Lloyd McPherson has an interesting comment here. Any way to organize a rather large group of sewists, I guess people that are making the masks. You had mentioned that there are people making masks. Makerspace is closed right now, and that could be, something at the response center. Interesting comment.
No, and no good idea should be left aside. We need to take a look at all of them, and we're happy to look at that. If we can do it in a safe way to engage people. And the other thing that's just come up as well, Rebecca, is people are talking about the weather finally is starting to break, and people are looking at their lawns, and people are looking at garbage left over on curbside, and people saying, how can we have community cleanup? So one of the things we're working with staff is how do we engage like to do community cleanup, waste management, getting yard waste. There's, for instance, no restriction on the number of garbage bags, black bags, recyclables. We're just encouraging people to get everything curbside they can. We'll be doing an education program. We're looking at heavy garbage because we've had to move out to, are there other alternatives? In the short term, we have a burn ban in place to help our emergency personnel focus on the things they do. But at the same time, we need to deal with the fact that a lot of people clean up their yards and have usually a little fire to burn away last year's yard waste. Well, that we have to move to get it curbside. So we have public education coming about those things, and community response. Again, you mentioned before, if we can help people with a protective mask to have something that people can come together and sew, as Lloyd has mentioned, I'd be happy to look at what kind of resources. We responded to your point before about homelessness and vulnerable populations. We are trying our best to react. So these are good ideas. This is showing again that no one has all the answers in a pandemic. No one knows what tomorrow is going to be faced. What we've seen is people are stepping up. Our food banks, where we have people who cannot, because they're in a high-risk area, volunteer. That's very troubling for them, and we have other people stepping up to volunteer. So we see now the masks is an area. So I'd welcome the opportunity for that discussion.
Yeah. As Kathy McKinnon says, Kathy, and I see your comment here, Kathy, I'm just going to put it on. It's a day by day. There's daily updates. I mean, I can't even imagine because I'm just working media side of things, but day by day, minute by minute, I would say updates that come through at some times. Now, I got an anonymous question, Cecil, to ask about getting the dump open right now. I don't live in Sydney, so I don't know anything about the dump. Getting the dump open. Do you know what the reference to that might be?
Definitely do, because of the drop-off facility on Spar Road has been closed to public access because of the connectivity. However, we have looked at that matter of waste management. When we talked about having to delay the heavy garbage pickup, one of the options in the past was a call to haul, because with heavy garbage, people going, it also creates people doing recycling of things that someone else, one person's garbage, another person's treasure, but also the pickers for recycling. And but it's too much activity. So we're looking at, we will consider, we had one option was call to haul. So someone would actually arrive, pick up heavy garbage, move it out. We've also have been talking, myself and the CAO, with our waste management officials. We're going to discuss, can we have scheduled times for drop off so that the person that just says, I want the dump open, it isn't going to be you, but you may be able to call with our other staff being available to deploy them to say, hey, you now have an appointment, so you can come at 1:20 and someone else may have to come at 1:40 and schedule it out so that they will have access. We're exploring those ideas. We've heard what people have been saying, that they need access to the dump. So we want to make sure that we can respond in a way that still meets the requirement for the distancing and the health and safety standards for protection of staff.
Okay. So we've got a lot of viewers watching from Ontario. Out west right now, they're watching, saying hello from Sydney and Ontario, London, Ontario, formerly from New Waterford. Hello, Marion McDonald, Jimmy O'Donnell, Kathy McKinnon, Karen McPherson in Sydney, Joanne Sinclair in Birch Grove. Hello from Glace Bay, Joyce Price. We can see you, my dear. Terry Butts watching. So lots of viewers here. Feel free, viewers. We're going to leave it open for about another minute here to text me at 902-305-7833 if you want to ask an anonymous question without your name being on the comment. I think I've addressed, I'm going to open it up now to the public to address any questions they felt wanted to be answered. And again, I told Cecil before he got on that if there was no answer for something, he could pass, because we don't always have the answers to everything. Victor Allen David, let's see here. Victor's down my way. Cecil, I must give thumbs up to all provincial and municipal leaders on how everyone is working together. And Lloyd McPherson, Cecil, we are behind you all the way. Morgan Erickson, deferral. Now, Raham asked a question here. Deferral just means that you still have to pay in full. People are asking for help, not deferrals.
So it's a very good question, Rebecca, and to looking at that, we're doing the same thing. So what you just had as a question, we're asking that of the province and the federal governments as they look at how do they respond to the fact that we have to. So we're scaling back. We're cutting costs. The reason we did only essential spending only with a resolution, we did not pass a budget, for a very specific reason, that we are going to analyze month by month where we're at, what resources do we need to spend to do these types of things, and to provide municipal services, and what types of things do we need to do in day-to-day response. So we recognize the pressures on people. Unlike provincial and federal governments, we have mechanism to borrow, to go into deficit and apply that to debt. We are a corporation, we're not a crown entity. So how we're structured as a municipality means that we have to look for supports. We have mandatory costs that are transferred to the provincial government, and those costs come on your local municipal tax bill. So we're the tax collector and transfer of money. In the case of the CBRM, it's $19 million. So we've been talking to the province about, can we defer those payments to make sure we have cash flow? Can the equalization payments from the province come in? Because we're transit as essential service and we've had great expansion, supports for that, we are working with the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, with the Minister of Municipal Affairs to say, what are those things that we can do? So we're having, all kinds of dialogue, and we recognize, and the deferral is there for people who feel they can't pay their taxes at this time. But again, we don't have a mechanism to provide additional relief without support from the provincial and federal governments to accommodate it. But we're making the requests, we're showing where the pressures are, we're providing that data on a by-case basis of where the pressures are being faced in terms of police, fire, transit. Those areas are having extra pressures. So as we go forward, people looking for relief, those measures have been, or those issues are being advanced, and we're taking it, as I say, when the viewer said day by day, we're responding day by day, and we're looking at what are the supports that, as you can see, the federal government's providing more flexibility. I know you're interviewing both a member of parliament on that aspect. I think that's an area as well for your viewer to ask. I think Jaime might be up next, MP Batiste, and so so with they've been doing some phenomenal work. They're working with us. We contact each other. We have shared calls. We're trying to look at how to get people to work. My number one focus, by the way, is to get people working through our infrastructure. I've talked provincially and federally. How can we get people employed so they have the money to pay their normal tax bill? And we are very focused on that, of getting hundreds of people back to work in the coming weeks.
Excellent. I see a comment from Marlise, my good friend in Florence here. Will the community cleanup still be a go? Maybe not the beginning of May. It's something us Florence residents take pride in every year. You're doing a great job, Cecil. I don't think I know about that community cleanup.
Lots of communities work as teams for their cleanup. As I mentioned before, we are trying to look at how we can possibly do street by street neighborhood where individual households provide or on a walk route cleanup, and we're looking at a scheduling. Can we do community days where people maintain the social distancing? We normally will offer up to communities as well. I know people self-initiate, but we'll also deliver garbage bags, gloves, and have our staff come back and pick up once there's a call in. A lot of community groups have a barbecue for the people who volunteer. Some of those things can't be done, in fact, can't be done under current circumstance. Some things may be delayed to once we get through the pandemic, but we've heard people saying we want to help clean up. We know we want to make, the messes that snow has been hiding to go, to get that litter picked up. So we are looking at, can we do a community by community or specific days for activity where we will say we will have pickup crews for people putting any litter they've picked up curbside. So we will work with community, and we're trying to find a way to have a scheduled program so people can promote it on their social media, people be aware of it, and we'll do it in a responsible way that doesn't break the directives of the state of emergency.
So Bella, if you just heard Cecil's comment, I think that he's responding to your question as well. I'm acknowledging it, but I'm not going to put it up again. Again, Bella was just asking, she just tuned in and said that the dump will open. If you rewind the video after we're done, Bella, you'll see him comment there halfway through about the dump. So she just heard same concern, Cecil. There's no contact out there. People are cleaning out their homes and stuff. So definitely, Bella, just rewind and fast forward. I think we've got pretty much all the questions. I know you're busy, Cecil, and I said I'd keep you for 30 minutes only. Just a lot of positive support. Ida Matheson, great idea. Rahim, thanks. That makes a lot of sense about the taxes. Let's hope that you can help everyone keep up the good work. We hope the provincial government can help us out. So viewers, I want to thank you very much for getting engaged tonight. And again, Cecil, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Is there any closing words that you want to say before we pop off?
Well, just I know there's lots of stuff happening, lots of, as we say, day by day. So I'd encourage people, Rebecca, to go to the CBRM website at cbrm.ns.ca. If they have specific questions at the 563-2276, they can. If they don't get a live person answering, they can leave a message and someone will call them back. We have information kits. We still will deliver doorstep to people. Our finance staff, in terms of tax bills, are going to work with people as we work with the other levels of government to figure how we get through this from a financial point of view. But I want to assure all your viewers that we are doing everything to maintain operations. It's not easy. And at the same time, we're mindful that we have to be also planning for recovery. A lot of extra time now is going on to how do we recover from this and how do we restore our communities and grow the economy after this. And that's why we're trying to do as much stimulus work during the pandemic within the guidelines we've been given. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. And if you have other questions from your viewers that come in, I'm happy to receive them and respond back to you as well. And possibly, if not myself, some staff or officials to respond to some of these matters as well.
Excellent. I just want to give a shout out of gratitude to your team today who helped facilitate this tonight. Thank you very much. Going out to Sheila, and I just saw Sheila popped on here and said hello. So thanks, Sheila, for helping out with that today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Cecil. Again, this is Rebecca with Ripple Effects Canada. Stay tuned. At 8:30, we have Jaime Baptiste coming on. Thanks, Cecil. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And this officially ends the broadcast for tonight. Thank you, viewers. See you on shortly.